Hi there, students, and welcome to our Once Upon a Time and Place Story Maps of Climate Change project. This project is one that we are working with young people to think about climate change research. And in this presentation, I am going to talk to you about the causes of climate change. In general, when we speak about climate change or when we think about climate change, we think about number one, the causes. Secondly, number two, we think about the impacts of climate change. And then lastly, we think about the mitigation strategies that we can implement to deal with the problem. So let's begin. So, thinking about the causes of climate change, in general, the causes are divided into two broad categories. These include natural causes, which include solar irradiance or solar cycles and volcanic eruptions. So these do contribute to the ways in which our world is warming up at various rates. However, more importantly is the second category, which is called anthropogenic or humanly created causes, anthropogenic causes of climate change. And these largely include the release of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And I have a list of greenhouse gases here on this slide. However, carbon dioxide is the most important or the most significant in terms of its contribution to climate change. So we are considering the greenhouse gas emissions, number one, but we also have to think about land use change, because as we turn our land over for buildings, for cities, for agriculture, when we clear away the natural vegetation, we undermine the Earth's ability to absorb CO2, and this contributes to the problem. However, in addition to this, land use change in that process of transforming or clearing away natural vegetation, it may also contribute to the release of carbon dioxide into the environment. So land use change is also a really important issue that we need to look at. So the next thing we want to think about are the human activities that contribute to these anthropogenic causes of climate change. What is it that we are doing as a society that is leading to the release of greenhouse gases into the environment, or leading to our inability to deal with CO2 absorption? And we can categorize these activities into a number of different areas or sectors. The first one being energy production. This is a picture of a coal fueled electricity plant. So we can think about the ways in which the production of energy is a key way in which we engage in the burning of fossil fuels, which results in the emission of CO2 into the atmosphere. Energy production. Of course, we need energy. So essentially what we need to do is to think about the ways in which we can engage in energy production, but to do so in a sustainable way. The second category or sector or activity that we engage in is industry. And industry has long been contributing to the release of CO2 into the environment. This picture here is a pharmaceutical plant, and of course we do need pharmaceuticals, but we can look at all kinds of industry, from the manufacture of cars to various kinds of goods we use in the home, electronic items, books. Everything that we produce in factory settings or factory environments contribute to the ways in which industry plays a part in climate change. So we've got to rethink our industrial activities and the ways in which we produce the goods that we need to survive in our society. We can also think about buildings and the ways in which residential dwellings contribute to climate change. And again, we need to think about the ways in which we maybe we are able to rethink our building strategies. This slide here, or this image here, shows some houses with solar panels. So we can see in this instance that these examples or these places are beginning to engage in more sustainable forms of energy production. We do use a lot of energy in our homes, and we have to think about how our homes could be less damaging to the environment. We can also think about transport and the ways in which we transport ourselves for various activities, going to school, going to work. But we also want to think about the ways in which our goods and our products, the things that we use, our food, as well as our tools and technology and implements, are all transported to us from various locations. We can also think about travel and tourism and the ways in which those activities also contribute to climate change. And then lastly, we can think about forestry and agriculture and the ways in which it contributes to the release of CO2 into the environment through the clearing of forests and the clearing of natural vegetation, and through the ways in which, as we clear the vegetation or the green surfaces from our earth, that we undermine our ability to absorb CO2. So these are some very broad categories of activity, of human activity that we engage in, and that currently, because of the ways in which we participate or we engage in these activities, that they contribute to climate change. Now, we can also look at this in terms of the proportion of various activities as measured by the United States Environmental Protection Agency. Here we can see the biggest contributor is electricity and heat production, followed by agriculture, forestry and other land uses or land use change, land cover change, followed by industry and transport. But we do have to look at alternative energy sources, and we have to look at buildings and residential dwellings as contributors to climate change. So overall, what I wanted to do in this session is to give you an idea about some of the broad categories or ways in which we contribute to climate change as a society, the anthropogenic drivers of climate change. These are the issues that we have discussed in this session. And so I will leave you with an exercise for students to get you to think a little bit more deeply about the issues that we have discussed in this session. Number one, I would like to invite students working in groups, select one of the human activities discussed above. So it could be agriculture, for example, or you might be interested in transport, or you might be interested in residential dwellings. And on the basis of your selection, the topic that you look at, can you outline more specifically how that activity contributes to climate change? So for example, if we were looking at agriculture as a broad category, we might look at different forms of agriculture in terms of animal production or livestock, or in terms of crop production. And then we could also look at the methods through which agriculture is produced and the extent to which we need energy sources or we need to use technology to produce agriculture. And of course, we can also think about the transport and the manufacture of food to various parts of the world, and how that can also contribute to the broader impacts of climate change or CO2 emissions. So that's an exercise for groups. And then we also want to think on an individual basis, or we want to think maybe also about why is it important that we know or we understand about human activities? Why are these issues so important to us at the moment in terms of our research activities, that we want to understand the role of various processes and practices and the ways in which they contribute to climate change? Why is this such an important research trajectory at the moment? Why is understanding the problem really important for understanding solutions? Okay, so I would be delighted to hear your thoughts on these topics, your answers to these questions. You can email me directly with your ideas and your thoughts, your activities, or also you can get in touch with us to participate in one of our workshops.